Today's daf is daf Chavav. Lo ratza av eina mekudeshes. According to Rav Shimon, if a man is mekadesh b'bia and he adds a tanai al manash yirtza abba, in the case that the father rejects and objects to the marriage, the kedushin is not chal because there was no kiyum tanai. So we see that in the case where mekadesh was tola his ma'isa b'das acherim, then Rabbi Shimon would hold if the father agrees to the kedushin, he approves, then the kedushin is chal mafreya, and his be'ilah was a be'ilah shem kedushin. So we see that Rabbi Shimon holds yesh breira in a case of tola b'das acherim. And the Gemara says that Rava rejects this. Amalei, Rava says back to Rav Masechet, Bein l'Rav Yehuda, Bein l'Rav Shimon, Loshna tola b'das atzmo, Loshna tola b'das acherim, islahu breira. Both Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Shimon agree to breira, yesh breira l'mafreya, even in a case of tola b'das atzmo, and how much more so in a case of tola b'das acherim. And in the case of Lokeach Yaim and Akusim, in the Gemara on Daf Chof Hei and Aleph on the bottom of the Yomud, he cannot be matir the Yain l'mafreya. That's not because of Ein Breira. What we're afraid of is maybe the Yain will spill. K'diktani Taima. Then in that very same brisa that quotes the opinions of Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, it gives an explanation. Amru lo, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon said to Rabbi Meir, how could you be matir him to drink the yayin? Aren't you choshesh that after he drinks from the wine, before he gets a chance to be mafresh, the shnei lugim of truma, etc., the wine will spill on the floor, and then he won't be able to be mafresh. V'nimtza, and it turns out that there's no afrasha at all, so that what he drank from the beginning was tevel. We have to be choshesh, and we'll see soon that Rabbi Meir responds, and he's not choshesh for shemi yibak hanod. But nevertheless, we see clearly from both Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon that in the case of tola b'das acherim, tola b'das atzmo, there is breira, and it would be chalam afreya if not for the chashash of Shemi Yibak Hanod. But fundamentally, the principle of Breira operates to be mata the Yain L'mafreya. And what he's mafresh later generates a shame chulin regarding the Yain L'mafreya. Amalehem, and Rabbi Meir responds, L'kshay Yibaka, you know what? Let's not worry about it now. I don't have to be choshesh that it'll be baka. The node will split in half and the wine will spill on the ground. That's not something that's motzi and shchiach. We don't have to concern ourselves. And therefore, he can be mafresh later on and he could drink the wine l'mafreya, and therefore there's no problem. But it seems that everybody agrees, whether it's Rav Meir, Rav Yehuda, Rav Shimon, they all disagree. They all, agree that yesh breira. The question is, should we choshesh shemi yibak hanod? And this leads us to the Mishnah here on Daf Chavav. We're dealing now with the laws of a kasav la sefer krisus, and we darshan back on Daf Chav Gimel that we need lishma. And we have a machlokus between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Eliezer. What is the lishma? According to Rabbi Eliezer, the ksiva has to be lishma. According to Rabbi Meir, the chasima has to be lishma. Now, every shtar has two parts to it, as we've discussed in the past. It has the tofes, which is the standard nusach of a get for every single get, and then there's the toref, which includes the shema ish, the shema isha, the makom, and the zman. Now, in order to create lishma, you need what's called tzivui haba. And the question now is, what about the tofes? Since the tofes is a standard part that is the nusach of every single get, it does not require lishma. And therefore the Mishnah says, hakose tofse Gittin, he is allowed to write the sofer, because he wants to be ready without a tircha to immediately offer a get. So he writes a tofes, and he has to leave out a little space for the husband's name, the wife's name, the place, and the Zman, because that's the Torah fakir, and the Torah has to be written lishma. This Mishnah would seem at first glance to represent and reflect the Shita of Rabbi Elazar, namely that Edi Masira Karsei v'kosav lo lishma is on the Ksivas Aget. Now, what happens if in other shtaros, which are called shtari milva in this particular case, the sofer gets used to preparing a shtar even before he got the tzivur, he got the commission from the lova. And what's going to happen perhaps is that there's going to be a confusion in the minds of the sofer between other shtaros and Gittin. And therefore the Mishnah establishes that shitrei milva, in the case of a shtar milva, which is written by the lova and handed over to the malva, there's no requirement whatsoever of lishma. Now, if the sofer sees that this particular individual is running after so-and-so in order to influence so-and-so to extend a loan to him, then he wants to already prepare the shtar immediately so that later on, if he's overwhelmed with work and with hazmanot, then he'll have this shtar ready. Says the Mishnah, mokom hamalve, mokom halove, mokom hamos, and mokom hazman. Even though there's no din of lishma in shtari milva, nevertheless, he should make believe, so to speak. We're going to apply the requirements of get and clone them onto shtari mamon, so that the sofer gets used to writing a toref lishma in the case of get, and he shouldn't think that, well, I wrote the toref for the malvin lova without the tzivui, I'm going to do the same thing for a get. He sees that they're arguing. He thinks that there's reason to suspect that this marriage will end up in divorce. So now we made this gzera, and we said that even shtari milva have to be written in a way that would be appropriate for shtari git. Now, with regard to the word zman here in this Mishnah, with regard to shtari milva, Rashi points out that there's a whole nother consideration. Forget about lishma, forget about toref and tofes. We have to worry about what's called a shtar mugdam. Why? Because if, let's say, the sofer writes the shtar milva on Sunday, and the halva was not chal until Thursday when the malva gave over the mos to the lova, then if the malva gets a shtar with Sunday's date on it, he can collect from the lekuchos in event that the lova defaults on the loan, shalo kidin, it's a shtar mukta. But with regard to mokom hamalva, mokom halova, mokom hamos, and mokom hazman, leaving out mokom hazman, then we have a gzera in which we're sort of superimposing the laws of lishma of the Torah onto shtari milva. Now we extend the gzera to shtare mekach. A person has a piece of real estate. He's about to sell it to so-and-so. And the sofer is going to write the shtar on behalf of the mocher. The mocher, when he gets the shtar, will give it over to the lokeach as part of the deal, it's to clinch the kinyan. But the Mishnah says, Sorach laniach es mokom halokeach, mokom hamocher, mokom hamos, and mokom hasoda, mokom hazman. So too, even though Shitrei Mikach did not require Lishma, the Rabbanan made a gzera as if it were a get, superimposing the requirements of get onto Shtare Mekach. In such a case, then the names of the Lokeach and the Mocher and the Mokom, and of course, the amount of mos that's being paid and the Mokom and Zman, everything has to be left out until they get the tzivui from the mocher. Mibnei takana, the Gemara is going to explain that this takana is in order to protect the kashrus of a get. Rabbi Yehuda posel b'kulam. Rabbi Yehuda says that all these shtaros that were prepared by the sofer before the tzivui are possible. That means that even if he left out the toref, right, the shemos and the mokom and zman and so forth, nevertheless it's possible. And the Gemara is going to explain why Rabbi Yehuda passes. Rabbi Lazar disagrees with both the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda, who machshir b'kulo, and he holds that there was never a gzera on other shtaros to avoid writing the shtar, including the Torah, before the tzivui. Chutz mi Gittin noshim. In the case of Gittin noshim, we went even a step further. Says Rabbi Lazar, we don't even allow the writing of the tofes, because we're afraid that if we allow the sofer to write the tofes, then he might come to write the toref without the tzivui abal, and there won't be lishmosh and never because of lo lishmo. So let's try to summarize the three shitas of the Tanoim as recorded in our Mishnah. We have, number one, the shita of the Tanakama, that in all shtaros, like in get, just write the tofes without a tzivui and leave out the Torah. That's the shita of the Tanakama of our Mishnah. On the other extreme, we have Rabbi Lazar, who says that in Gittin noshim, even the tofes should not be written without a tzivui abal. And in the middle, we have here the Mishnah quoting the shita of Rabbi Yehuda, and he's on the other extreme, and for some reason unknown to us, he doesn't want anything written in any of the shtaros before the tzivui. Rabbi Yehuda Mishmuel tzarich she'aniach af makom hareat muteres l'chol adam. When the sofer writes the get, and we said that according to Tanakama at least, he's allowed to write the tofes, even without the tzivui abal, and we gave a list of the toref and what the sofer has to omit until he gets the tzivui abal. We have to add the line hareat muteres l'chol adam. That also is the toref, the ikar aget. Now, Rabbi Yehuda Mishmuel, and we're going to see this over and over again, says that the Mishnah is Rabbi Lazar. Yomar Edi Mesira Karsi, and therefore Be'inin Ksiva Lishma, according to Rabbi Lazar, the Kasav law should be interpreted literally as Lishma with regard to the Ksiva. The Ksiva has to be Lishma. And if Eidim are going to sign a get, it's only Mishum Takanas Chachamim, which is called Tikkun Olam. We're afraid that the Eidim Masira might get lost. We can't have access to them. They may die. And the Baal is going to say that he never wrote this get. It was Mezuyaf. There are no Eidim to be Machishim, and therefore we have a Tikkun Olam that the Eidim should sign on the get. Now, Shmuel interprets our Mishnah as reflecting the Shita of Rabbi Lazar. Now, earlier on Daf Chaf Aleph in Beis, we had a Mishnah that said Ein Kosvin Get b'Mechuber Lekarka, and Shmuel says that Mishnah reflects the Shita of Rabbi Eliezer, who says that the din of V'Kosav applies to the Ksiv itself, and therefore, if he wrote it on Mechubar, which is not subject to Nesina, therefore it's possible. Then we had a Mishnah on Daf Chav Beis on Beis, Hakol Ksherim, and Afilu Cherishot V'Kata, and Shmuel says that they can write only the Tofes, but not the Toref, and that's reflecting the Shita of Rabbi Eliezer. So we find on three different occasions, regarding three different Mishnayos, Shmuel repeats that the Mishnah reflects the Shita of Rabbi Eliezer. Utzricha. Gemara says we need all three statements of Shmuel on all three Mishnayos. Diashmi and Hakamaisa. In the case of Mechubar, we would have said by he, who de ikala ukmak Rabbi Eliezer. In that case of writing a get on Mechubar, we understand very well Shmuel, who says that has to be attributed to Rabbi Eliezer. And what happens if he writes the Tofes b'Mechubar, and then he cuts it off, and when it's Tolush, he writes the Toref, then that's okay. And the get is kosher, because the Toref was written on Tolush. The Ketani, and in the beginning of the Mishnah, it says, Ein kosm, we don't write b'mechuba. Uketani ksavo, if he went in and he wrote it, it's kosher. So how do we reconcile this? Why is it lachatchila, he shouldn't write b'mechuba, and b'di'eved, the get is kosher? The answer is lachatchila, he should avoid writing the tofes b'mechuba. Why? Because he might come to write even the Torah b'mechuba. And therefore, b'di'eved, if he went ahead and he wrote the tofes b'mechubar, and then he cut it off, it became tolush, and now he writes the Torah get, the get is kosher. So l'chatchila ein kosher. Aval seifa, but I would think that in the second Mishnah, which allows and validates a get that was written by a cherishot v'katan, the Katani, it says at the end of that Mishnah in the Seifa, she'ein kiyum hagel b'chosma. And the simple interpretation of the word chosmav indicates Ema Rab Meir hi that we're reflecting the shita of Rabbi Meir. And for this, I need Shmuel's chiddush to tell me that when it says Yizkai b'chosmav, it really refers to the writing of the get. And this Mishnah, likewise, says Shmuel, reflects the shita Rabbi Loza. V'yesh mina bahi. And even if we had Shmuel's chiddush in the second Mishnah, we would say, Ahi nami ikaluk Rabbi Loza. We could interpret that chosmav here, it means the ksiva saget. Aval ha, but in our Mishnah, that says that in Tofse Aget, we have to leave the room for the Torah, Ema, be the Sefer Rabbi Loza Havi, Reisha Lav Rabbi Loza. The Sefer tells us that even the Tofes of the Get, in the case of Gittin Noshim, should not be written by the Sofer before he gets the Tzivei Abal. And that's against the Reisha of the Mishnah, which says that we allow him to write the Tofes Haget. And therefore, the logical conclusion would be that Reisha Lav Rabbi Loza, that the beginning of the Mishnah does not reflect the Shita Rabbi Loza, because Rabbi Loza holds that Edim Masira Karse, and according to the Tana at the beginning of the Mishnah, he doesn't have to be Meshayah the Makom of Harei Muteres L'chol Adam. Why? He only needs to leave room for the Shema Ish v'Shema Isha. And the reason why he shouldn't write the Shema Ish and Shema Isha is for another reason entirely, as the Gemara is going to explain later. We'll pick that up in a minute. And therefore, so if Harei Muteres L'chol Adam is omitted, then it's not reflecting the Shita Rebbe Loza, Tzricha. And that's why Shmuel has to say no, that even the Reisha is attributable to Rebbe Loza, who holds Edim Masiri Karsa. And the Reisha and the Seifa are two different Tanoim that have a machlokas within the Shita Rebbe Loza. Was there a Gzera that prohibited writing the Tofes Haget without the Tzivei Abal because of the Gzera Shema Yichtov Gamas HaTorah? The Mishnah says that the reason why we have to leave Mokom HaTorah is Mipnei HaTakana. My Takana. What Takana was our Mishnah referring to? Who made this Takana? Oh, Rabbi Yonasan, Mipnei Takana Sofer. In other words, really, in truth, we don't want to allow a Sofer, Mikra Din, at square one, to write Tofsei Gittin without a Tzivui and Shalol Lishma, because then it might get switched and he might even write the Torah of Shalol Lishma. But Rabbanu would make it for the sake of the Sofer, so the Sofer should have ready for a possible customer the get. It's almost completely filled in, just has to fill in a little bit of spaces of the Torah. And Rabbi Loza, the Omer Edim Masira Karsa. So according to Rabbi Loza, all the Edim Masira make the get, into a Sefer Krisus, not the Edim Chasima. But the Rice, you don't even need Chasima on a get. And when it says in the Pasuk V'Kosav Sefer Krisus, it's referring to the writing of the get. B'dinu dafilu tofes namilo. In truth, the Chachamim should not have allowed the Sofer to write the Tofes without a Tzivui Abal Shelo Lishma. Why? Because he might come to write the Torah Shelo Lishma. Mishum Takonas Sofrim Shor Rabbanan. But there was a weighty consideration of Takonas HaSofrim to allow the Sofrim to get a head start, a jump start on writing the get. And therefore they said, you know what? We're going to allow you to write the Tofes as long as you leave space for the Torah. And Chas v'Shalom, you should not write the Torah without the Tzivui Abal. Now, with regard to this concept of Takonas Sofer, the simple pshat is that we want to make sure that the Sofer has parnos, because Sofrim are really fulfilling the will of the Torah, whether they're preparing stam, whether they're preparing shtaros. They are, so to speak, public workers, and we want to make sure that they are, earning their salary. So we made this kula, and we allowed the Sofrim to write Tofsei Gittin Shelo Lishma. However, there might be another explanation here, or an additional consideration for Takonas Sofer, and that is to make sure that the Baal, before he checks out, or makes a move, he'll have his get prepared immediately. Otherwise, she might end up being an aguna. Rabbi Yehuda posel bekulon. In the Mishnah, we record the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, and bein begitnu bein b'shar shtaros. We're not going to allow writing the Tofes. He's not worried about Takonas Sofrim, but rather Gazar Tofes Atu Toref, the Gazar Shtaros Atu Gittin. And here we're going to have the famous kasha of Gzeira L'Gzeira. Well, let's see what the two Gzeiras are. Number one, we have to worry that if the Sofer is going to write the Tofes without the Tzivui, he might come mistakenly to write the Toref without a Tzivui, and that would be Shelo Lishma. But here we're talking about Shar Shtaros. So we have to introduce another Gzeira on top, that if we allow this in Shar Shtaros, he might come to do it even in a get. And here we have a Kol Haramaz. If I'm not mistaken, his name was Margolios. And he writes, Ein Ze Gzeira L'Gzeira. This is not considered a Gzeira on top of a Gzeira. When they originally made the Gzeira of not allowing Tofsei Shtaros to be written without its Tzivui, according to Rabbi Yehuda, they included all Shtaros in that original Gzeira. So it wasn't like there was Gzeira number one, and then historically later there was Gzeira number two. The Meiri, however, writes that in a case of a serious Gzeira, which is what he calls Matsui, Tos Matsuya, he says then we will allow even for Gzeira L'Gzeira. Rabbi Loza Machsher B'Kulon, Chutz Gittin Noshin. So what does that mean? Rabbi Loza is going to make the following compromise. He's going to prohibit in Gittin Noshin writing the Tofes Shelo Lishma without a Tzivui Abal, but he's going to allow it in Shar Shtaros. And why is that? Tofes Atu Torah Gazar. He accepts one of these two Gzeiros, that if we allow the Sofer in the case of a get to write the Tofes Shelo Lishma, he might come to write the Torah Shelo Lishma. But Shtaros Atu Gittin Lo Gazar, that's already a Gzeira L'Gzeira. If you pile on top of this a Gzeira that prohibits the Sofer and Shar Shtaros from writing the Tofes Shelo Lishma. Now the Mishnah says that Rabbi Lazar, when he prohibited writing the Tofes of a get Shelo Lishma, he quoted the pasuk Shenemar B'Kasav La. So the Gemara asks, "V'haki Kasav La Atorefu D'chsiv." How does Rabbi Lazar quote the pasuk of Lishma and justify his prohibition of writing a Tofes Shelo Lishma? Elo, you have to add another word to the Mishnah. Ema mishum shenemar v'kasav lo lishma. If you add the word mishum, what it means is that we're worried about the possibility down the line that the ksiva, the Torah, might be shelo lishma. And in order to avoid that, we prohibit writing the tofes shelo lishma.